This is our fourth and the last method that we are going to learn for voting methods. It's called the pairwise comparison method. So as you can tell, we're probably going to do some sort of pairwise comparisons. What we're going to do, we are going to compare every pair of candidates. And in the pairing, we're going to award the votes of a column to the candidate who is preferred in that column. So this is very similar to when we did that runoff election in instant runoff. So at one point in time, we're only going to look at two candidates, just this person versus this person, and just give points based on who's preferred. So we will divvy out all of the votes to those two. What we're going to do once we're done with that comparison between that pairing, we're going to give 1 point to the candidate who wins the pairing. If there is a tie, which is possible, we award half a point to each. So to both of them. So it kind of shows that both people had something. So we don't just give them nothing, we give them half a point. So we split it up if they do get a tie. So what we're going to do then is we will do that for every pairing. So every time you finish a pairing, we'll give out points. And so then at the end, we'll have a tally of points, and the candidate with the most points wins. So the one who wins the most head-to-head elections. So compared head-to-head to all the other candidates, they won the most times. Just so that you're aware, if you have 3 candidates in an election, there are 3 pairings. With 4 candidates in an election, there are 6 pairings, and the numbers would just keep going up from there. It's actually the number of groups of 2 that you could count, so that would be the total number of candidates choose 2, so we would use that combination formula to calculate that. I've put an example up on the board so that we can practice what this looks like. So in this example, I just did 3 candidates to start with so that we can start a little smaller. So the first thing I like to do when I do pairwise comparison is first just write down what are all of the pairs. So I like to just start with, pick somebody to start with. So we could start with like A, and we could look at, well, who could we compare A to? Well, we could do A versus B. We could then do A versus C, and then we could look at, well, what's left? We said there's 3 candidates, we should have 3 pairs, we would still then need B versus C. And we'll just do each of these one at a time. So first let's look at A versus B. So at the moment, the only 2 I care about is just A and B. So we're going to look, say, in the first column and just see between only A and B, who's preferred? Who's above the other ones? And as we see here, A is preferred to B. So A is going to get those 2 votes that this column represents. So I like to just write the votes underneath them. In the second column then, only looking at A and B, we see that B is preferred. So B is going to get those 5 votes that that column represents. And then again here, looking at just A and B, B is preferred, so they're going to receive those 6 votes that that column represented. Now, notice we're not just tallying columns, it's important how many people voted that way in that column. So then when we total these, we see that B has a total of 11, A only had 2, so B would win that pairing. So when we give points out in the end, so we give points to A, B, and C, B just won themselves a point, and I typically just tally the points. So I'll tally a 1 there for B. So then we're done with A versus B, but we still have to do all the rest of our pairings. So now we'll take a look at, say, A versus C. So now we're only looking at A and C. B is irrelevant. So just between A and C, we look at who's preferred, and it's A. So A receives those 2 votes. Then we're going to look in the next column and see just between A and C, who's preferred. A is preferred, A is above C, so they're going to receive those 5 votes. Notice it doesn't matter that A is not in first place, it's just the fact that when I only look at A and C, those people like A better than C, they ranked it higher. So A gets those 5. And then A versus C in the third column, C is preferred, so C gets those 6. When we total those up, A though got 2 plus 5 is 7, so it's 7 to 6. Close, but A did win. So now in the points, I'm going to tally, I'm going to give A a point. Last one is B versus C. Again, only now this time just look at B versus C. A is irrelevant. So just B versus C. C is preferred here. So that's 2 votes to C. Just B versus C in the second column. 5 votes goes to B is preferred. And then just B versus C in the third column. B is preferred, so they get 6 votes. So B did get those 5 and 6 together makes 11, so B gets 11 votes, which is more than C's 2, so B gets a point for that one. We did all 3 pairings, so now looking at the points, we see who has the most, and it's B. B won the most head-to-heads between different people in this example. So B wins with the most points. So it's a very interesting thing where we're kind of taking a different approach. So now we're taking this approach of, what if I do just look at these pairs one at a time, compare 2 different people and see, well, what do the voters all think about these 2 people compared? What about this person with this other candidate? What about them with this other candidate? So what we see is people ultimately preferred B to more candidates than anybody else. So there's this argument that well, B would be a preferred candidate overall then, so we will declare them the winner. We are going to try another example of this, and then we'll practice a few other things with this example.